On our golden wedding anniversary, my husband personally poured me a drink. Watching me drink it, he laughed until tears came to his eyes. Wanwan, you're truly heartless, really. I looked at him blankly. I had supported him through school in his youth, funded his business in middle age, and in my later years, looked after our grandchildren for our son and daughter. Where was I heartless? Seeing I didn't speak, he cried, shoulders shaking, tears and snot streaming down his face. You knew perfectly well my heart belonged to Shenyan. But today she died, and you hid her death from me, wanting me to muddle through the rest of my life with you in ignorance. Su Wan, back then she was the one who wanted to support me, but you stole the credit first, using that debt of gratitude to force me to stay by your side. Now that she's gone, none of us should live. My stomach churned. I vomited several mouthfuls of black blood, finally realizing the wine was poisoned. As my life slipped away, I died utterly confused. Because from beginning to end, I was the only benefactor. Who was this Shenyan, whose credit I supposedly stole? Seeing the fluttering red flag and the familiar campus, I realized I had been reborn. Reborn back to the 1980s, to the moment when, encouraged by my father, I first went to select sponsored students. In front of me stood a row of slightly thin, young-faced students. The principal was going on, introducing how excellent they were and how impoverished. I didn't look at them. Instead, I turned my head and looked around. I didn't understand. This sponsorship was arranged by my father, after his business success, by contacting the school directly. It wasn't a public sponsorship activity. From start to finish, I was the only sponsor. Who exactly was this Shenyan, whose credit He Chang'an claimed I had stolen? Finding nothing, I turned back, bewildered, and looked towards He Chang'an in the crowd. Noticing my gaze, the principal hurriedly introduced how pitiful he was and how ambitious, finally smiling at me, waiting for me to offer money. Unexpectedly, before I could refuse, He Chang'an spat first. Pa. Even if I starve to death in this life, I will never accept handouts. The principal's smiling face froze. He slapped him hard across the face. You blind fool, don't you know how to speak to our benefactor? Taking the slap, He Chang'an suddenly remembered that he was no longer the wealthy businessman, nicknamed Half-City He, who had ridden his father-in-law's coattails to success. He was now just a poor student, orphaned, with a gravely ill grandmother, unable to afford tuition, surviving on free soup in the cafeteria every day. After being slapped, He Chang'an covered his face and glared at me fiercely. I was right. You were all in cahoots. My father was furious and was about to teach He Chang'an a lesson. But I held my father's hand, decades of memories flooding back. Back then, I had spotted He Chang'an in the crowd, with his uncommon temperament, and decided to sponsor him. He Chang'an, blushing, had bowed his head and promised to repay me in the future. With my father's financial support, he focused solely on his studies. He received guidance from top teachers, not only getting into the best university but also, with our family's funding, starting his own company. Those years were turbulent economically, but with massive financial backing, He Chang'an always stood firm. Back then, he was always attentive to me. If I so much as sneezed, he would personally feed me medicine, terrified I might have any mishap. It turned out he was just afraid his benefactor would die young, cutting off his path to wealth and glory. After all these years, my life had become a complete joke. I truly didn't know who Shenyan was, nor did I know He Chang'an had long been deeply in love with her, so much so that because she died, he wanted to take me with him. And now, reborn on the day of the sponsorship, I looked back across the entire sports field again. Besides me and my dad, everyone else present were just poor students waiting for sponsorship. Shenyan, who the hell are you? Could it be that He Chang'an was mentally disturbed and imagined you? Ignoring He Chang'an, I took my dad's arm and announced my decision. Out of the 10 people here, excluding the one who refuses handouts, I want to help the remaining 9. Instantly, the eyes of the other students lit up with excitement, and they repeatedly thanked me. The principal was so thrilled his voice trembled, he shook my hand, tears nearly falling. These are all poor children clinging to the edge of a cliff. With your support, they'll surely soar to great heights and serve your Sioux family. Several people, tears in their eyes, bowed deeply to me and my father, vowing to be loyal to the Su enterprise if they ever succeeded. He Chungang rolled his eyes dramatically. Of course, same old trick. Su Wan, you're so calculating, trying to buy people's entire lives with a little favor. The other students were furious, immediately accusing He Chungang of judging a gentleman's heart by his own mean measure. He Chungang argued back vehemently, but as he spoke, his gaze suddenly froze. I looked in that direction and saw a vaguely familiar girl. As she walked closer, I suddenly remembered. Yes, a person named Shen Yan had indeed appeared in my life. But she wasn't here to sponsor poor students. She was the daughter of our family's maid. After our maid was injured, my parents, pitying me, had specially let her move into our family's guest house and allowed her daughter to come and take care of her. This time she came, it seemed, to bring me lunch. Sure enough, Shen Yan called my name while pulling out some chicken soup. Mom was worried you all came out early without eating, so she stewed this at home. Quick, try it. I was still immersed in past memories, a bit slow to react, when He Chungang rushed over and knocked over the lunchbox. Su Wan, you're always like this, ordering others around for your benefit. Shen Yan is also a good girl from a decent family. What gives you the right to make her your servant? Shameless. Speechless, before I could retort, Shen Yan spoke up in surprise. Are you crazy? Miss Su is your benefactor. Who gave you the nerve to speak to her like that? He Chungang snorted coldly. Nian Nian, in this life, I'm not choosing her. I want you to be my sponsor. I'm smart, always in the top 10 at school. As long as you help me, once I achieve success and fame, I'll definitely repay you. Shen Yan looked at He Chungang as if he were an idiot, stepping back half a pace. Are you sick? Completely immersed in the joy of being reunited with Shen Yan, He Chungang didn't notice anything wrong. Instead, he bragged on, tirelessly promoting himself. Not only do I have book knowledge, but I also have life experience. I know the business trends for the next few decades. Investing in me is a sure thing. With me around, you'll be incomparably wealthy in the future. Shen Yan, please give me a chance. Although Shen Yan was the maid's daughter, our family was always generous to the servants, even the maid's salary was several times that of an ordinary worker. Shen Yan liked to imitate my way of dressing, just by looking at her appearance, you couldn't really tell the difference in our status. Sponsoring a student, while a bit difficult for her, was still possible if she scrimped and saved, given that our family treated servants well and the maid's monthly wage equaled half a year's sweat and toil for a worker. After much deliberation, and with He Chunggang's constant urging, Shen Yan finally nodded. All right, but we need to agree on some rules. He Chungang was overjoyed. Not just 3 rules, even 30, 300, I'm willing. Shen Yan rolled her eyes. First, I can only give you the most basic food money. After all, you're a student. If you have too much money, your mind won't be on your studies. He Chungang nodded repeatedly, saying that was only right, and he hadn't expected anything more. Second, if you fail the college entrance exam, you not only have to repay the money I gave you, but also pay interest. He Chungang nodded in agreement again. Third, to make sure you don't have second thoughts later, once you get into university, you must immediately start working to repay me. A flash of ecstasy crossed He Chunggang's eyes, followed by a contemptuous look at me. You used to provide me with good food and drink, but said you didn't expect anything in return. Look at her, she makes everything clear from the start. That's what a true gentleman does, not like you who pretends to want nothing but ends up wanting everything. He Chunggang's mouth kept moving, but I couldn't hear his sarcasm anymore. I was reborn in this era full of opportunities, where anyone could ride the wind and soar. Why would I waste time on anything else now? Getting the Su family business bigger and stronger, seizing the market, was the real priority. I signaled to my father that it was time to leave, and Shen Yan immediately followed. He Chungang, however, continued to champion her cause. Su Wan, you really should change your attitude. You're both wealthy young ladies, yet you make her deliver your meals. And now that you see us talking, you want to leave. Using such cheap tricks, aren't you afraid of retribution? Hearing this, Shen Yan blushed. How could I ever compare to Miss Su? He Changing became even more smug. Nonsense, you're 10,000 times prettier than Su Wan. Flattered, Shen Yan said that Wan Wan wasn't bad either. He Changing immediately sneered. You see, Shen Yan always defends you. But back then, you even hid the news of your own good friend's death from me. You're simply not human. Oh, so in He Changing's mind, Shen Yan had always been my good friend. I just felt that years of devotion had been thrown to the dogs, and found it ridiculous. I simply told the driver to go, leaving him covered in exhaust fumes as we drove away. I took my father back to the office and talked with him all day and night about the future business landscape. Although my father didn't understand why I could talk so confidently about the garment industry and real estate, he listened carefully and took notes. After a long day, I was exhausted and fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow, my mind full of the developmental journey of my previous life. The next day, with dark circles under my eyes, feeling the boundless energy of my young body, I bounced out for morning exercise. I never expected to see He Changing as soon as I went downstairs. Give me money. As soon as he saw me, he stretched out his hand, with an air of. I was dumbfounded. Who are you? Why should I just give you money? Even a beggar knows to kowtow. He Changing's face darkened, and he viciously grabbed my wrist. Just because I spent a little more time with Shen Yan, you're already jealous? Su Wan, don't pretend in front of me. I know you're also reborn. You should understand, in the last life, I was the most successful businessman in Beijing. Being on good terms with me won't do you any harm. I laughed out of anger. He Changing had nothing now, but he had kept those airs. Unfortunately, he only remembered his success, forgetting that in the final of senior year, his grades had plummeted. It was me who hired university professors for one-on-one tutoring, barely scraping him through the doors of higher education. Without the Su family's golden mountain, He Changing couldn't even get an education, let alone succeed. I flatly refused, but He Changing persisted. I'm used to a life of luxury and comfort. I can't stand a hard life. The food money Shen Yan gives me is only enough for the cafeteria. Do you know coarse grain buns scratch my throat? I stared at him in shock. If you can't stand it, then starve. I'm not your mother. Why come to me? He Changing grew even more furious. Nonsense, you're my wife, of course you have the responsibility to take care of me. I smiled, raised my hand, and slapped him hard across the face. Open your dog eyes and see. We're worlds apart. With that, I slammed the door shut, blocking out He Changing's curses. Without the top-tier tutors I had hired at a high price, He Changing's grades indeed plummeted. He blamed everything on me and came to harass us again. Su Wan, I never thought you'd be such a petty woman. Just because I didn't choose you, you won't help me? I've long forgotten all that high school stuff. I'll give you one last chance, hire me a private tutor immediately. Otherwise, when I achieve success and fame, I will never forgive you. I was busy outlining the process for scrap steel with my dad, I had no time for him. Didn't you already decide on your sponsor? Why come to me? He Changing trembled with rage. You're jealous, I knew it. Fine, since you're so ungrateful, I'll make you regret it. With that, he turned and ran. And I, immersed in the beautiful vision of growing the business, couldn't be bothered. What I didn't expect was that, not long after, Shen Yan came to me, blushing. Wan Jia, I've decided to get married. Hearing this news, I spat out a mouthful of water all over the table, nearly choking. Get married? To He Changing? Shen Yan nodded, her eyes full of hope for the future. He said he knows the future economic trends, and he predicted a few recent big events accurately. I think he's quite reliable, so I've decided to trust him. I didn't want to watch Shen Yan walk into a fire pit, so after thinking it over, I tried to dissuade her. What if he just got lucky with his guesses? Shen Yan's expression changed. You really are just like He Changing said, trying to sabotage our relationship. I never expected He Chongqing to be such a gossip, so I simply raised my hands in surrender. Alright, fine, if you want to get married, get married. I respect your choice. Best wishes. Shen Yan finally smiled. Okay, and even if he doesn't become a big businessman, it's fine. He said he's willing to be a live-in son-in-law in my family. I've observed him, he's not only good at studying but also physically fit. Even if he doesn't get into a good school, he can farm for my family for free in the future, saving a huge expense. I couldn't help but give He Chongqing a mental thumbs up. In this era, being a live-in son-in-law meant being looked down upon and gossiped about. He Chongqing really would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. After some small talk, Shen Yan finally revealed the purpose of her visit. She was going back to her hometown to get married, and worried the procession wouldn't be grand enough. She wanted to borrow a few cars from my family. Thinking of how kindly our maid had treated me, I readily agreed, even gave her a big red envelope, and accepted the role of bridesmaid. On the wedding day, He Chongqing looked at me venomously. See? You wouldn't help me, but there are other rich girls who will. Do you know what a motorcade means in this era? It means Shen Yan's family wealth far surpasses yours. Su Wan, your chance is gone. From now on, with Shen Yan's support, I'll only do better than in the last life. And what you'll face is my endless oppression and revenge. I didn't want to cause trouble on Shen Yan's happy day, so I just rolled my eyes. As a bridesmaid, I sat in the second car, following the convoy out of the city. Out of the county town, into the mountains, over the mountains, bumping along for a full 3 hours, finally arriving at Shen Yan's hometown, the poorest, most remote place for miles around. The news that Shen Yan was marrying a future university student had spread throughout the impoverished village. Everyone who saw the motorcade rushed out to watch the excitement. Nian Nian, you've really made it. Your own family's house is falling apart, yet you managed to trick a university student into marrying into your family. Nian Nian's mother works as a maid for the Su family, and the daughter can also marry up. It just shows, people really need to get out and explore the world. At the simple wedding venue, He Chongqing was just about to bow with Shen Yan when he heard this and suddenly froze. He looked at Shen Yan in disbelief, then turned to look at the most dilapidated hut in the entire village, the half-collapsed thatched cottage plastered with big red happy couplets. His lips trembled as he stammered in shock. Nian Nian, what do they mean? Aren't you a rich girl like Su Wan? Shen Yan lifted her red veil and looked at him quizzically. When did I ever say I was a rich girl? He Chongqing panicked, pointing at the motorcade and demanding. If you're not a rich girl, how could you afford to hire a motorcade? Hearing this, Shen Yan laughed. These aren't my family's cars. Miss Su Wan heard I was getting married and specially lent them to me. If my mother wasn't a maid for the Su family, my wedding wouldn't be this grand. It took He Chongqing a long moment to understand. He staggered back a few steps, his gaze landing on me. Su Wan, you tricked me? You knew Shen Yan wasn't rich, why didn't you tell me sooner? I spread my hands. You never asked. Upset by this, Shen Yan was unhappy. He Chongqing, what do you mean? You look down on my family for being poor? Dressed in his bright red wedding gown, standing in the middle of the crowd, He Chongqing was caught in a dilemma. No, Shen Yan, I didn't mean that. But your mother's just a maid, why did you pretend to be a sponsor and make me misunderstand? Hearing this, Shen Yan's expression darkened. I went to deliver food to Miss Su Wan that day. You came up to me yourself, said you'd get rich in the future, and begged me to help you. Everyone here saw it, including Miss Su Wan, who can testify that you were the one who pestered me first. You proposed marriage yourself, wanted to get engaged early. Now you're going back on your word? He Chongqing, aren't you afraid I'll accuse you of? He Chongqing's face instantly turned white. In this era, relationships between men and women were taken very seriously. He had actively pursued Shen Yan and had already married her. If he backed out now, he could face criminal charges. His mind went blank, his face ashen, lips trembling constantly. No, Nian Nian, don't misunderstand. I truly admire you, truly want to marry you. I just. He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what he was thinking. He had just suddenly realized that from now on, he would have no support whatsoever, but instead would have to bear an additional responsibility. He was scared. Seeing He Changding silent for so long, the villagers watching the fun were displeased and started cracking their knuckles, ready to beat him up. I watched this scene with interest. In the last life, He Changding, for a Shen Yan he had only seen once, had unhesitatingly sent me to my death. Now that he finally got to marry the girl he loved, why are you crying instead? He Changding couldn't snap out of it for a long time. But no matter how he felt inside, things had reached this point, he had to marry Shen Yan. So, gritting his teeth, He Changding took Shen Yan's hand and began to pledge his loyalty. Nian Nian, I didn't mean anything else. I just never expected your family situation to be like this. But don't worry. With me here, our life will only get better and better from now on. That's what he said, but the smile had vanished from He Changding's face. The joyful atmosphere of the wedding was also gone, replaced by a quiet. When he came to toast, seemingly stung by my smiling face, He Changding ground out between clenched teeth. Su Wan, you did this on purpose. In the last life, you were jealous that Shen Yan could have my love, so you hid her death from me. In this life, you hide her background, deliberately letting me misunderstand, wanting to see me make a fool of myself. You're just trying to force me back to you this way, aren't you? Let me tell you, don't even dream about it. Even without your help, I'll use the memories of my past life to become that fearsome half-city he again. His eyes blazed with anger, and he looked like he could grind his teeth to powder. I just smiled. Suit yourself. My completely indifferent attitude infuriated He Changding even more. He slammed his glass down on the table, his expression turning more ferocious. What are you so smug about, Su Wan? Do you really think I can't succeed without your help? If you've got the guts, just wait. 30 years on the East Bank, 30 years on the West. Don't bully a young man just because he's poor. I smiled again. Well, since you don't need my help, I'll be going now. With that, I expressionlessly stood up and told the driver to take the convoy and leave immediately. He Changding was stunned. Stop right there. It's mountains all around here. If you leave, how will I get out? How can my noble feet walk all those mountain roads? I quickly told the driver to speed up, leaving his furious shouts far behind. After returning home, to make up for the lost time, I stayed up all night writing a business plan. Who would have thought that before dawn, someone smashed my window with a stone? Underneath He Changding's shouts woke the neighbors. Su Wan, if you've got the guts, come down here and face me. I really had no idea why he was going crazy this time, and ordered someone to kick him out. Soon, a servant came running back. Miss, this He Changding insists you schemed against him, and that you caused his grandmother's death, demanding you pay with your life. Hearing this, I was momentarily stunned, but quickly recalled the old matter. Back when I sponsored He Changding, I learned he had lost both parents and only had a bedridden grandmother. At that time, I was still a sheltered young lady, couldn't bear to see human misery, and couldn't stand to see He Changding so sad. So I asked my father to help cure his grandmother. Seeing my feelings, my father sent He Changding's grandmother to the best hospital in the provincial capital and found the best doctors. After treatment, not only was she cured, but she was also much more energetic. Except in the last life, although her illness was cured, her heart was wicked. Knowing I liked He Changding, this old woman, whose life I had saved, tormented me day and night, constantly nagging, insisting that I was aiming above my station by wanting He Changding, and only agreeing to our marriage after forcing me to provide a huge dowry. After being reborn this time, my heart was no longer with He Changding, so I had forgotten about this terminally ill grandmother. It seemed this time, she hadn't made it. And He Changding was blaming me for it. Annoyed, I got up and went downstairs. As soon as I opened the door, I saw He Changding glaring at me with bloodshot eyes. Su Wan, you are so vicious. Just because I didn't choose you, you had to kill my grandmother? You murderer. If you don't give me an explanation today, I won't let you get away with it. He charged at me furiously, ready to hit me. But the security guards my parents hired weren't pushovers. One kick sent him flying. He Chungking crashed to the ground in pain, struggling for a long time before getting up. Su Wan. Don't you have any guilt? She was my grandmother. My only family. You killed her with your own hands, and now you have your people beat me? Are you still the Su Wan I knew? I rolled my eyes. What does your grandmother's death have to do with me? He Chungking, since she was your family, why didn't you get her treatment? Why should I bear the responsibility, call in favors, use connections, and take on such a huge for you? He Chungking looked as if struck by lightning. He was stunned for a long time, then gasped. Su Wan, we were husband and wife for a lifetime. I took care of you for decades. You knew perfectly well my grandmother was in a bad way, yet you turned a blind eye, and now you dare speak to me like this? In the past, even if you weren't a good wife or mother, at least you took care of my grandmother. Why have you become like this? I am so disappointed in you. I looked at him like he was an idiot. So, you smashed my window just to come here and rave nonsense? He Chungking, I'm also very disappointed in you. Pay up. He Chungking was stunned again. Pay for what? I pointed towards the broken window of my room. That's imported crystal glass. 500 yuan per square meter. He Chunging's eyes blazed with hatred. My grandmother died because of you, and you want to settle accounts with me? Su Wan, do you have any humanity left? I silently watched the man before me for a long time without speaking. In the past, I provided for him, treated his grandmother, and used my family's power to single-handedly lift this frail youth to become the richest man in the region. And the result? Not only did he not remember any of my kindness, but he secretly hated me for half his life for sponsoring him. Now that everything was back on track, I was and he was the poor student. But he had already gotten the life he wanted, returned to his original class, and yet he came to blame me for not taking care of his family. How ridiculous. Thinking this, I couldn't help but blame myself for being blind. And he Chungking was still going on and on, blaming me for being cold-blooded and heartless. I slowly stepped forward, looked at his mouth opening and closing, raised my hand, and slapped him. Had enough? He Chungking, you call me a murderer. Don't you yourself know your grandmother's condition? You didn't care about your own family at all, and before even graduating, you were already scheming to marry into her family. I don't think your grandmother died of illness, but was angered to death by you, an unfilial descendant. He Chungking yelped and jumped up, pointing at me. You dare hit me? I slapped him twice more. I hit you. What are you going to do about it? He Chungking covered his face, gritted his teeth, and in the end, couldn't do anything to me. Instead, he left in sorrow and anger, leaving me with a proud silhouette. Just you wait. The day will come when you regret this. He was right. The very next day, I did regret it. Because he Chungking had blatantly moved into the small courtyard I had lent to the maid, and sold the stone lions in front of my house to pay for his grandmother's funeral. Hearing this news, I rushed over immediately. I saw He Chungking and Shen Yan, dressed in mourning white, sitting resting in the courtyard. Seeing me, He Chungking snorted coldly. What, your conscience bothering you? Come to apologize? Su Wan, unless from now on you give me 1,000 yuan living allowance every month, and hire me tutors, I will never forgive you. I rolled my eyes. Auntie, you're fired. Take them and get out of my house right now. The maid was dumbfounded. Miss Su, I've worked for your family my whole life. How can you fire me just like that? Watching her come running over, I felt helpless. You said you hurt your foot and needed to recuperate. Now you've been living in my family's guest house for a full 6 months. You haven't worked a single day, but your salary has been paid as usual. You can't take advantage of my parents' kindness and treat my family like fools. Anyway, you're fired. Move out immediately. The maid was utterly reluctant and started to argue, but I pointed at the single stone lion at the gate. If you're not gone within a day, I'll call the police and report you for stealing my family's property. You can choose between going to jail or leaving quietly. The maid gritted her teeth and glared at Shen Yan. It's all your fault. You insisted He Changing would be successful and told me to help him. Now look, the employers found out, and I got fired. He Changing, I only agreed to let my daughter marry you because I thought you really knew the future. Tell me, how are you going to get rich? He Changing's face flushed bright red. Not daring to confront his mother-in-law, he turned his on me again. Su Wan, your family is so rich. This courtyard is just sitting empty, what's wrong with letting us stay here? And the stone lion, well, you wouldn't give me money, so I had no choice but to sell it. Now I still need to study. If you kick my family out, where will we live? Go back to my place, to that smoky, suffocating shack. I nodded eagerly. Congratulations, you guessed right. He Changing, if you have any shame at all, don't freeload off my family. He Changing panted with rage. Su Wan. How long are you going to keep this up? I'm used to luxury and comfort. How could I live in a place like that? Besides, my grandmother just died there. It's too unlucky for me. I looked at him with amusement. Well, you can live on the street. Anyway, you shouldn't live in my house. Seeing they still wouldn't leave, I simply had the security guards evict them. Soon, the luggage of all three was thrown out. This time, I personally locked the gate and didn't leave until their cursing faded into the distance. Back home, I pondered the company's next move. He Changing had probably finally realized I wouldn't help him anymore and finally quieted down, no longer bothering me. Soon, it was summer. The time for the college entrance exam arrived. In the last life, He Changing, guided by various famous tutors, had become the city's top scorer, enjoying unprecedented fame. This time, rather curious, I had someone inquire about his results. Soon, the driver returned, barely suppressing a grin. Miss, you won't believe it. That bastard He Changing, always strutting around like a peacock, only scored just over 200 on the exam. I was stunned, then burst out laughing. Right, his young body housed the soul of that calculating old man. As for book knowledge, decades of living had long since returned it to his teachers. In the last life, I was He Changing's first stepping stone. This time, he was destined to rot in the mud,